The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked forward, her boots clicking against the polished stone floor. Above her, the ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into shadows. Around her, hundreds of alien beings watched from their elevated seats. Chen had seen this place many times before, but today felt different. The air hummed with tension. The usual chatter between different species was absent. Instead, silence filled the enormous room like a heavy blanket. At the center of the chamber stood Ambassador Zethkari of the Veltar Empire. His tall, thin body was covered in blue-green scales that caught the light from the floating orbs overhead. His forearms moved in graceful patterns as he prepared to speak. Behind him, representatives from 47 different worlds waited. Chen stopped at the designated spot for humans. The circle of light that marked her position felt like a spotlight on a stage. She could feel thousands of eyes watching her every move. Ambassador Chen of the human species. Zethkari's voice boomed through the chamber. His words were translated instantly into her earpiece. You stand before the Galactic Federation High Council to receive our final decision. Chen nodded but said nothing. She had expected this moment for months. The signs had been clear. Trade routes closing to human ships, diplomatic meetings being canceled, military exercises near human space becoming more frequent. 3 cycles ago, we welcomed humanity into our federation, Zethkari continued, his golden eyes fixed on Chen. We offered you friendship, trade, and protection. We shared our knowledge and opened our worlds to you. The ambassador paused, letting his words sink in. Around the chamber, other aliens nodded in agreement. Chen noticed how they all seemed to lean forward slightly, as if they were eager to hear what came next. But humanity has not honored the spirit of our agreement, Zethkari said. His voice grew harder. You have expanded too quickly. You have claimed too many worlds. Your military grows stronger each day. This behavior threatens the peace we have maintained for over 1,000 years. Chen felt anger building inside her chest, but her face remained calm. This was exactly what she had been trained for. Years of diplomatic school had taught her to never show emotion during negotiations, even when those negotiations were really just threats disguised as diplomacy. The High Council has made its decision, Zethkari announced. Humanity must cease all expansion beyond your current 12 systems immediately. You will surrender your military fleet to Federation control. Your colonies on the Outer Rim worlds will be abandoned. These worlds will be placed under Federation protection. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some aliens looked satisfied. Others seemed nervous. Chen noticed that a few representatives were avoiding eye contact entirely. You have 7 standard days to comply with these demands. Zethkari continued. If you refuse, the combined fleets of the Federation will remove humanity from space entirely. We do not wish for war, but we will not allow your species to threaten galactic peace. Chen waited for the translator to finish. Then she waited another long moment, letting the silence stretch. Finally, she spoke. May I ask a question, Ambassador Zethkari? You may. When your scouts first found Earth, what did they report about our world? Zethkari's scales shifted color slightly, showing confusion. I do not understand the relevance of this question. Humor me, Chen said with a slight smile. The Veltar ambassador looked around the chamber, then accessed his datapad. The initial report classified Earth as a Class 7 death world. Extreme weather patterns, dangerous wildlife, toxic atmospheric elements, and unstable geological activity. The recommendation was to avoid contact entirely. And yet you made contact anyway. Why? Because, Zethkari said slowly, we discovered that intelligent life had somehow evolved and thrived on such a hostile world. It was unprecedented. Chen's smile grew wider. Yes, it was. My people evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to survive ice ages and volcanic eruptions. We tamed predators that could tear us apart with their claws. We built cities on ground that shook and split open without warning. The chamber had grown completely silent now. Every alien in the room was listening carefully. But here's what your scouts didn't report, Chen continued. They only saw Earth. They never looked deeper. They never asked what else humanity might have accomplished. She reached for the small device clipped to her uniform. It was a quantum communicator, standard diplomatic equipment, but Chen's had some modifications that weren't in any Federation database. You see, when we joined the Federation, we didn't stop being who we are. We didn't stop looking for worlds that challenged us. While you were watching our 12 official colonies, we were busy elsewhere. Chen activated the communicator. The device hummed to life, sending out a signal that would travel faster than light to dozens of hidden locations across the galaxy. Council 07, this is Terra Prime. She spoke into the device. Execute Protocol Deathworld. Authorization Chen Alpha 779er. Zeth Kari stepped forward, his forearms spreading wide. What have you done? I've sent a message, Chen replied calmly. To worlds you've never heard of. Worlds your people cataloged as uninhabitable and then forgot about. Worlds where humanity has been living and growing for the past 3 years. The large display screens around the chamber began lighting up. Star maps appeared, showing the local galactic region. Red dots started appearing on the maps, dozens of them, then hundreds. These are the worlds where humans actually live, Chen explained. Not the garden worlds you know about. Not the safe, comfortable planets with perfect weather and gentle breezes. These are the real human colonies. She pointed to one of the red dots. Kepler 442c. Gravity 3 times Earth normal. Acid rain that melts metal. Atmosphere that would kill most of your species in minutes. We call it New Detroit, and 8 million humans call it home. Another dot. Proxima Centauri B radiation storms that sterilize the surface twice a day. Temperatures that swing from frozen to molten every few hours. Population 12 million. The murmur in the chamber was growing louder. Some aliens were standing up, pointing at the displays in shock. Wolf 1061c, Chen continued. So hostile that we had to modify our own genetics just to survive there. The people who live there aren't quite baseline human anymore, but they're still human enough to remember who their friends are. Zeth Kari's scales had turned a pale yellow color. This is impossible. Our sensors would have detected large human populations. Your sensors look for the kind of life that exists on your worlds, Chen said. Comfortable life, safe life. You never thought to look for the kind of life that thrives in places where everything else dies. The chamber erupted in voices as aliens began talking all at once. Some were shouting demands for information. Others were calling for immediate military action. A few were quietly making their own communication calls. Chen raised her voice to be heard over the noise. You wanted to see what humanity was capable of. You wanted to know if we were a threat to galactic peace. Well, Ambassador Zeth Kari, you're about to find out. The quantum communicator in her hand beeped softly. Message received and confirmed. Across the galaxy, on worlds that would kill most galactic citizens just by breathing their air, humanity was mobilizing. Your 7-day ultimatum is noted and rejected, Chen announced. But I'll give you a counteroffer. You have 72 hours to reconsider your position. After that, you'll discover what children of Deathworlds can do when someone threatens their family. The chamber fell silent again as the implications of her words sank in. In the darkness between stars, humanity's true strength was waking up. Admiral Marcus Volkov stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above Kepler 442c, watching the acid rain fall through the planet's poisonous atmosphere. The drops hit the station's shields and dissolved into glowing streaks of light. Below, the surface of the world was hidden by thick clouds that would eat through most starship hulls in minutes. This was home. The communication panel behind him beeped with an incoming priority message. Volkov turned away from the deadly beauty outside and walked to the control station. His movements were careful and precise, the result of living for years under gravity that would crush most aliens. Admiral, we're receiving a Deathworld protocol signal from Terra Prime, his communications officer reported. Lieutenant Torres was young, barely 25, but she had been born on this world. Her bones were dense as steel, her muscles like cables. The standard human modifications that let them survive here had become second nature to the younger generation. Put it through, Volkov ordered. Ambassador Chen's voice filled the command center. Council 07, this is Terra Prime. Execute Protocol Deathworld. Authorization, Chen Alpha 779er. Volkov felt a grim satisfaction settle in his chest. They had been preparing for this moment since the day humanity first met the Galactic Federation. The soft aliens with their comfortable worlds and gentle lives had no idea what they were about to face. All stations, this is Admiral Volkov. He spoke into the fleet-wide communication system. Deathworld protocol is now active. Begin Operation Reaper's Wake. Across the Kepler system, hidden installations came to life. What the Federation had catalogued as failed mining operations and abandoned research stations suddenly revealed their true purpose. Massive shipyards that had been concealed beneath the planet's surface began rising through the poisonous clouds. The ships that emerged didn't look like standard human vessels. They were built for war in the harshest environments possible. Their hulls were thick enough to withstand the crushing pressure of gas giant atmospheres. Their engines were designed to function in the magnetic storms that surrounded neutron stars. Their weapons had been tested in conditions that would destroy normal ships before they could even fire. "Admiral, the Ghost Fleet is reporting ready status," Torres announced. "Good. Signal Admiral Vasquez that she has operational freedom. Tell her the Federation needs to learn what happens when you corner a predator." On the far side of the galaxy, Admiral Elena Vasquez received Volkov's message aboard her flagship in the shadow of Proxima Centauri b. The radiation from the red dwarf star was cooking the planet's surface, even as the dark side froze solid. Her ships hung in the star's corona, using the deadly radiation as cover. The Ghost Fleet was humanity's answer to conventional space warfare. Every ship could operate in environments that would kill their crews and destroy their electronics. The radiation that fried enemy sensors was just background noise to vessels designed to hide inside dying stars. "All ships, this is Admiral Vasquez," she broadcast to her fleet. "The Federation wants to see what humans are capable of. Time to show them why we chose to live next to stars that cook everything else alive." Her fleet of 200 ships began moving, sliding out of the star's corona like sharks emerging from deep water. They would strike at the Federation's border systems first, hitting supply lines and communication relays. By the time the aliens realized what was happening, it would be too late. Meanwhile, in the HD 4307 system, Admiral Yuki Tanaka received the activation signal aboard her command ship. Outside, the planet HD 4307G spun through its chaotic orbit, its surface temperature swinging from 200 degrees below zero to 300 above in a matter of hours. The Iron Storm Armada was built for this kind of chaos. Every ship could function in temperature extremes that would shut down Federation vessels. Their crews had grown up learning to fight in environmental suits that doubled as combat armor. To them, the vacuum of space was just another day at the office. "Launch all squadrons," Tanaka ordered. "Target Federation industrial worlds in the Vega sector. Show them what happens when you threaten someone who learned to fight where the ground turns to lava twice a day." But it was from Wolf 1061C that the most disturbing response emerged. Admiral Thane Morrison stood in the bridge of his flagship, though "stood" wasn't quite the right word anymore. The genetic modifications that allowed humans to survive on Wolf 1061C had changed them in ways that would horrify the Federation. Morrison's body was tall and thin, his skin pale and tough as leather. His eyes had been replaced with cybernetic implants that could see across multiple spectrums. His hands ended in claws that could tear through metal. He was still human in mind and soul, but his body had become something else entirely. His ships were different too, built using biotechnology that merged human engineering with alien principles they had discovered in the planet's hostile ecosystem. The vessels looked more grown than constructed, their hulls pulsed with organic rhythms. Their weapons were alive. "Fleet Admiral Morrison to all bioships," he spoke into his communication system, his voice carrying harmonics that human throats shouldn't be able to produce. "The soft skins have declared war on the children of death worlds. Time to remind the galaxy why some places are better left alone." The biofleet began its movement toward the galactic core. Unlike the other human fleets, these ships didn't follow conventional physics entirely. They could regenerate damage by consuming matter from dead ships and asteroids. They could adapt their weapons and defenses based on what they encountered. They were evolution in action, and they were heading straight for the heart of Federation space. Back on Earth, Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays in the Sol System Command Center. 47 different human fleets were now moving toward their targets. Some would strike military installations, others would hit economic centers. A few had special missions that only Chen knew about. "Admiral, we're receiving communication requests from Federation military commands across the galaxy," her communication officer reported. "Ignore them," Chen replied. "They'll have plenty of time to talk after they see what we're capable of." She turned to look at Earth through the command center's main viewport. The blue-green world looked peaceful from orbit. It was hard to imagine that this apparently gentle planet had given birth to a species that could thrive on worlds that killed everything else. But that was humanity's secret. They had never really left Earth behind. Every death world they colonized was just another version of home. Every hostile environment was just another challenge to overcome. The Federation had made the mistake of thinking that humans would become soft and comfortable like other galactic species. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Signal all fleet commanders," Chen ordered. "Operation begins in 6 hours. Rules of engagement are simple. Show them what Deathworlders can do, but leave enough of their infrastructure intact that they can surrender when they're ready." She paused, thinking about the aliens in the Galactic Council who had threatened her people, and remind all commanders that we're not conquering the galaxy. We're teaching it a lesson. There's a difference. Across space, humanity's hidden fleets continued their approach toward Federation space. The galaxy was about to discover that threatening a species that evolved on a death world was the last mistake many civilizations ever made. The first sign of trouble came from the Outer Rim Patrol Station, Beta 7. Commander Kresh of the Altarian Navy was reviewing routine shipping reports when his sensor operator suddenly went rigid at her station. "Commander, I'm detecting multiple ships approaching from the Kepler region," she reported, her voice tight with confusion. "But the signatures are wrong." "Wrong how?" Kresh asked, moving to look over her shoulder at the sensor display. "They're too dense, sir. Too hot. The heat signatures suggest their engines are running at temperatures that should melt their hulls." Kresh studied the readings. 12 ships, moving in perfect formation at speeds that seemed impossible for vessels of their size. "Send a standard challenge signal. Demand identification." The response came back immediately, but not through communication channels. Instead, the approaching ships simply accelerated. Their heat signatures climbed even higher, reaching levels that made Kresh's instruments scream warnings. "All hands. Battle stations," Kresh shouted. "Launch fighters! Charge weapons." But before his ships could respond, the human vessels opened fire. The weapons they used didn't appear on any Federation database. Streams of superheated plasma that burned hotter than solar cores struck the patrol ships with surgical precision. The Altarian vessels, built for comfort and efficiency, simply came apart under the assault. Kresh had just enough time to activate the emergency beacon before his command ship's bridge filled with fire. The last transmission from Beta 7 was 4 words. "They're not ships? They're—" The message cut off as Admiral Volkov's heavy assault squadron finished their work and moved deeper into Federation space. 3 systems away, Admiral Vasquez's ghost fleet was demonstrating why they were called ghosts. The Federation border fortress at Rigel Station was considered impossible to attack. It was built inside an asteroid field, protected by automated defense platforms and early warning sensors that could detect approaching ships from light years away. The Ghost Fleet simply ignored the sensors entirely. Their ships, designed to operate inside stellar radiation fields, were invisible to detection systems built for normal vessels. They slipped through the asteroid field like shadows, their hulls absorbing sensor pings instead of reflecting them. The first the fortress knew of the attack was when their defense platforms started exploding one by one. Admiral Vasquez's ships emerged from hiding inside the asteroids themselves, having spent days maneuvering into position while disguised as floating rocks. "This is Admiral Vasquez to Rigel Station," she broadcast as her ships surrounded the fortress. "Your weapons are offline. Your communications are jammed. Your escape pods are targeted. Surrender now and your people will not be harmed." The fortress commander, a proud Centaurian named Fleet Captain Taurus, activated his emergency protocols. "Unknown vessels, you are in violation of Federation space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Vasquez sighed. She had hoped they would be smarter. "Very well. Coast 7, demonstrate our capabilities." One of her ships moved toward the fortress's main defense grid. Instead of firing weapons, it simply flew into the defensive barrier at full speed. The energy shields that should have stopped any attack simply parted around the human vessel like water. The ship's hull began to glow as it absorbed the defensive energy, converting it into power for its own systems. Within minutes, the entire grid was drained and the fortress lay defenseless. "How?" Taurus whispered into his communicator. "We learned to build ships that can fly through the heart of stars," Vasquez replied. "Your little energy barriers are like warm sunshine to us." But it was Admiral Morrison's biofleet that truly terrified the Federation forces they encountered. The proud Third Fleet of the Veltar Empire, considered one of the finest military formations in the galaxy, met Morrison's ships near the Kepler Nebula. Admiral Zethmore, cousin to the ambassador who had delivered humanity's ultimatum, was confident in his fleet's abilities. 300 ships of the line, crews trained for generations in space combat, weapons that had conquered a dozen star systems. Unknown vessels. You will surrender immediately, Zethmore broadcast as the strange human ships approached. You are outnumbered 3-1. Morrison's reply came through on all frequencies, his modified voice carrying harmonics that made sensitive equipment malfunction. Numbers are irrelevant when you don't understand what you're fighting. The battle lasted 13 minutes. The bioships didn't fight like normal vessels. When the Veltar ships fired their plasma cannons, the human vessels simply absorbed the energy and grew larger. When missiles struck their hulls, the bioships consumed the explosives and used the metal to repair any damage. But worst of all, when Morrison's ships destroyed enemy vessels, they didn't leave wreckage behind. Instead, they somehow absorbed the destroyed ships, incorporating their technology and crew into their own systems. The Veltar crews didn't die. They were transformed, becoming part of something larger and stranger. By the end of the engagement, Morrison's fleet had grown by 50%. The remaining Veltar ships drifted powerless, their crews alive but changed. Their vessels now serving new masters. Tell your High Council, Morrison broadcast to the survivors, that they have seen only the beginning. We are what happens when life refuses to die no matter what you throw at it. Reports flooded into Federation command from across the galaxy. Human fleets were striking everywhere at once, using tactics that made no sense according to established military doctrine. Admiral Tanaka's Iron Storm Armada had hit the industrial world of Proxima, stationed during a solar flare that should have knocked out all electronics. Instead, her ships had used the electromagnetic storm as cover, their hardened systems unaffected by radiation that crippled the defending fleet. On the mining world of Kepler Prime, human ground forces had landed during a volcanic eruption that should have made military operations impossible. The human soldiers, wearing environmental suits that looked more like powered armor, fought effectively in conditions that forced the defenders to evacuate. In the research system of Wolf Station, human ships had somehow hidden inside a black hole's accretion disk, emerging to attack when the defenders thought they were safe behind the event horizon's protective gravity well. In the emergency session of the Galactic High Council, panic was beginning to set in. Ambassador Zethkari stood before the assembled representatives, his scales now a pale gray color that indicated deep fear. The reports coming in make no sense, he announced to the chamber. These humans are fighting in environments that should kill them. They're using tactics that ignore basic physics. Their ships regenerate damage faster than our weapons can inflict it. A representative from the Andromedan Consortium raised her crystalline appendage. How many of our fleets have been destroyed? None, Zethkari replied, and the confusion in the chamber was immediate. That's what makes this so terrifying. They're not destroying us. They're changing us, converting our ships and crews to serve their purposes. Our people are alive, but they're not the same anymore. The representative from the Centaurian Republic, an elderly being whose people had been spacefaring for over 2,000 years, spoke quietly. In all our history, we have never encountered anything like this. What are these humans? Zethkari looked at the report streaming in on his datapad. Entire star systems were going dark, not destroyed but transformed. Human fleets were growing stronger with each victory, adding Federation technology to their own in ways that shouldn't be possible. I think, he said slowly, we made a terrible mistake. We thought they were like us, a civilized species that could be reasoned with or intimidated. But they're not like us at all. He looked up at the assembled aliens, many of whom had never seen a true predator in their comfortable, safe lives. There's something that evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, and now we've given them a reason to apply those survival skills to us. Outside the council chamber, space was full of ships fleeing toward the galactic core as news of the human advance spread. But Admiral Chen, watching from Earth's command center, knew that running wouldn't help. Her people had spent 3 years learning every detail of Federation space. They knew where every shipyard was hidden, every supply depot, every safe harbor. The galaxy was about to discover that when you threaten a species that treats death worlds as vacation homes, there's nowhere to run that they won't follow. 3 weeks after the human fleets began their assault, the Galactic Federation's military command structure lay in ruins. Admiral Kethvar of the Combined Fleet Operations stood in what remained of the Strategic Command Center on Galactic Central, watching status displays that showed nothing but red warning lights. "Give me the full report," he ordered his aide, though he already knew it would be catastrophic. Lieutenant Voss, a young Zephyrian whose homeworld specialized in aerospace tactics, read from her tablet with a shaking voice. "The outer rim is completely compromised. The middle systems are under attack. Industrial production across 12 sectors has dropped to 0. Casualties?" Kethvar asked. "That's the strange part, sir. Total Federation military deaths are less than 10,000. But we've lost contact with over 200 million crew members." Kethvar stared at the numbers. In 3 weeks of warfare, humanity had effectively eliminated Federation resistance while barely killing anyone. It should have been impossible. "They're not destroying us," he realized aloud. "They're absorbing us." The reports from individual battles painted a picture that challenged everything the Federation understood about warfare. On Rigel Prime, Admiral Vasquez's Ghost Fleet had somehow convinced the entire planetary defense force to switch sides after demonstrating that their ships could operate inside the planet's own sun. At the Centaurian shipyards, Admiral Tanaka's Iron Storm Armada had landed troops during a solar storm that should have fried all electronics. The human soldiers, protected by suits that seemed to welcome the radiation, had captured the facilities without firing a shot. The defending crews, faced with enemies who treated lethal radiation as a minor inconvenience, had simply surrendered. But it was Admiral Morrison's biofleet that truly defied comprehension. Intelligence reports suggested his ships were no longer entirely mechanical. They seemed to be alive, growing and adapting with each encounter. Worse, the crews of ships that surrendered to Morrison weren't simply captured. They were integrated into his fleet's organic systems, becoming part of something larger and stranger. "Sir," Lieutenant Voss interrupted his thoughts, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Zethmore's remnant force." Kethvar nodded grimly. Zethmore had been commanding the defense of the inner systems until 3 days ago, when Morrison's biofleet had reached his position. The holographic display activated, showing Admiral Zethmore's familiar face. But something was wrong. His scales had a strange, almost metallic sheen. His eyes held flecks of silver that moved like living things. "Admiral Kethvar," Zethmore spoke, his voice carrying harmonics that Veltar throats couldn't normally produce. "I am instructed to deliver a message from Admiral Morrison." "Zethmore, what have they done to you?" Kethvar asked. "They have shown me the truth," Zethmore replied calmly. "The galaxy is weak because we have never truly been tested. We have lived comfortable lives on safe worlds, fighting wars that barely challenged us. The humans are different. They are what we could become if we were willing to embrace the crucible that forged them." The image shifted, showing Morrison himself standing beside Zethmore. The human admiral's appearance was disturbing, tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shift between organic and mechanical textures. When he spoke, his voice carried the sound of worlds where life itself was a constant battle. "Admiral Kethvar," Morrison said, "your people have fought bravely, but you don't understand what you're facing. We're not conquerors. We're teachers. And the lesson is simple. Soft civilizations create soft people, and soft people cannot survive what's coming." "What's coming?" Kethvar demanded. Morrison smiled, revealing teeth that were definitely not human anymore. "Look beyond this galaxy, Admiral. Look at the spaces between stars. Something has been watching the Federation's expansion for centuries, waiting for you to become weak enough to harvest. We've seen the signs on the death worlds where we live, worlds that border the dark between galaxies." The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at an empty display. Before he could process Morrison's words fully, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. "Sir, we have multiple contacts approaching the Galactic Core," his tactical officer reported. "It's Admiral Chen's personal fleet." Kethvar moved to the main display, watching as dozens of ships emerged from hyperspace near the Galactic Center. These weren't the exotic vessels of the other human fleets. These ships looked almost normal, almost like standard Federation designs. But Kethvar had learned not to trust appearances when dealing with humans. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies," the communications officer announced. "Put it through." Admiral Chen's voice filled the command center, calm and professional. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. addressing all Federation forces in the core systems. You have fought well, but this war is over. Stand down your weapons and prepare to receive boarding parties. Like hell, Kethvar muttered, then activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Kethvar. We make our stand here. The core systems will not fall. But even as he gave the order, Kethvar knew it was hopeless. The Federation's last great fleet, 2,000 ships representing the combined might of 47 civilizations, was about to face an enemy that had already proven conventional tactics were useless against them. The battle for the Galactic Core began at 800 Standard Time. It ended 27 minutes later. Chen's fleet didn't use exotic weapons or impossible technologies. They simply fought better, moved faster, and anticipated every Federation tactic before it could be implemented. Their ships were tougher, their crews more skilled, their coordination perfect. But more importantly, they fought like they had nothing to lose. Because for humanity, this wasn't their first home. Every human in the fleet had grown up on worlds that could kill them with a moment's inattention. They had learned to fight in environments where a single mistake meant death. The Federation crews, trained on safe worlds with comfortable gravity and breathable atmospheres, had never faced anything like the focused aggression of people who had spent their entire lives fighting for survival. When the last Federation ship surrendered, Admiral Chen opened communication channels to the entire Galactic Core. Citizens of the Federation, her voice broadcast to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. The war is over. Your military has been defeated but not destroyed. Your people have been captured but not harmed. Your worlds remain intact and under your control. She paused, letting her words sink in across the galaxy. But understand this. Humanity is no longer asking for permission to exist in this galaxy. We are claiming our right to settle any world we choose, no matter how hostile. We are establishing ourselves as the Federation's protectors, whether you want our protection or not. In his command center on Galactic Central, Admiral Kethvar listened to Chen's words with growing dread. He understood now what Morrison had been trying to tell him. This wasn't really about territory or politics. This was about preparing the galaxy for something worse. Admiral Chen, he broadcast back. What did Admiral Morrison mean about something watching from beyond the galaxy? Chen's response was immediate, and the concern in her voice was clear. Look at your long-range sensors, Admiral. Look toward the galactic rim beyond the spiral arms. Look at the spaces where there should be nothing but empty void. Kethvar turned to his sensor operator. Do it. Scan beyond the galactic edge. The results appeared on the main display moments later. In the dark spaces between galaxies, something vast was moving. The sensors couldn't resolve details at such distances, but the gravitational distortions were unmistakable. Ships, millions of them, all heading toward the Milky Way. We've been watching them approach for 2 years, Chen continued. The death worlds where we live are close to the galactic rim. We see things that your safe inner worlds miss. Whatever's coming has been harvesting other galaxies for millennia, and it's almost here. The command center fell silent as the implications hit home. The Federation had been fighting among themselves while a real threat approached from outside. The war between us is over, Chen announced. The real war is about to begin. And for that fight, you're going to need people who know how to survive when everything is trying to kill them. Outside the command center, space was filled with human ships taking control of Federation installations. But now Kethvar understood that they weren't conquerors. They were the galaxy's immune system, preparing for an infection that was already on its way. 6 months after the end of the Federation War, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again in the Galactic Council chambers. But this time everything was different. The elegant floating seats that had once held proud alien representatives now contained a mixture of species, many showing signs of integration with human biotechnology. Admiral Morrison's biofleet hung in orbit around the Council world like living asteroids, their organic hulls pulsing with gentle bioluminescence. The other human fleets maintained positions throughout the system, but they no longer looked like an occupying force. Instead, they appeared to be guardians watching over something precious. Chen walked to the center of the chamber, but she wasn't alone. Admiral Volkov accompanied her, his massive frame moving with the careful precision of someone who had spent years under crushing gravity. Behind them came Admiral Vasquez, her skin showing the pale scars of radiation exposure that marked someone who had learned to live inside stellar coronas. But it was Admiral Morrison who drew the most attention. His transformation was now complete, no longer recognizably human in appearance but still somehow recognizably human in spirit. When he moved, the biofleet in orbit responded, their hulls brightening in harmony with his presence. "Members of the new Galactic Council," Chen began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "6 months ago, we ended the Federation War. Today, we gather to discuss why that war was necessary and what comes next." Ambassador Zethkari, still bearing the silver modifications that marked his integration with Morrison's biofleet, stood from his seat. "Ambassador Chen, my people have spent these months trying to understand what happened to us. The changes we've undergone, are we still ourselves?" Morrison stepped forward to answer, his modified voice creating harmonics that resonated through the chamber's acoustics. "You are more yourselves than you have ever been. The Federation created a galaxy of comfortable people living comfortable lives on comfortable worlds, but comfort is not strength. Safety is not survival." He gestured toward the massive displays around the chamber, which now showed real-time feeds from the galactic rim. The dark spaces between galaxies were no longer empty. Massive structures, clearly artificial, were approaching the Milky Way's outer edge. "The harvesters are coming," Morrison continued. "They have consumed 12 galaxies that we know of, possibly more. They feed on civilizations that have grown soft and complacent. The Federation would have been easy prey. A representative from the Centaurian Republic, her body now bearing the same adaptive modifications that allowed humans to survive in hostile environments, spoke up. But surely the Federation's combined military might would have been sufficient to defend against any threat. Admiral Volkov laughed, the sound carrying the bitter experience of someone who had seen real hardship. "Your combined military couldn't defeat 4 human fleets operating with minimal resources. What makes you think it could have faced something that harvests entire galaxies?" Chen activated the chamber's holographic systems, showing tactical analyses that human intelligence had compiled over the past months. "The harvesters don't fight the way we do. They don't invade worlds or conquer territories. They simply arrive at a galaxy and begin consuming it, starting with the most developed civilizations and working their way down." The display showed the remnants of the Andromeda galaxy, now nothing but dark matter and scattered debris. This was their last target, a civilization that controlled over 1 billion star systems, reduced to cosmic dust in less than a decade. Silence fell over the chamber as the assembled representatives processed the implications. Finally, a young Zephyrian who had been modified to survive in the high radiation environments where human fleets operated, asked the obvious question, "How do we fight something like that?" Morrison smiled, his transformed features somehow still managing to convey warmth. "By becoming something they don't expect. The harvesters consume soft civilizations because soft civilizations are easy to digest, but we're not soft anymore." He gestured toward Zethkari and the other modified representatives. "Your people have been integrated with human biotechnology not to control you, but to strengthen you. You can now survive in environments that would have killed you before. You can fight in conditions that would shut down your old equipment." Admiral Vasquez stepped forward, her Ghost Fleet training evident in the way she seemed to blend with the shadows despite standing in full light. "The modifications aren't just physical. They're psychological. You've learned to think like predators instead of prey, to see challenges as opportunities instead of threats." Chen nodded agreement. The Federation made the mistake of thinking that civilization meant becoming gentle. But true civilization means becoming strong enough to protect what you value. And what's coming will test every bit of strength we can muster. The chamber's displays shifted to show the current state of the galaxy. Human colonies now dotted the map. But they weren't the garden worlds that the Federation had preferred. Instead, humanity had claimed the Deathworlds, the hostile systems, the places where life was a constant struggle. "Every human colony is now a fortress," Chen explained. "Every citizen is a soldier. Every world is a training ground for the kind of warfare that's coming. We've turned the galaxy into something that will be very difficult for the harvesters to digest." Admiral Kethvar, who had spent the past months working with human military advisors, stood from his position. His own modifications were subtle but significant. Enhanced reflexes, improved radiation resistance, the ability to function in low gravity, environments that would have left him helpless before. "What you're describing sounds like turning the entire galaxy into a military camp," he observed. "Not a military camp," Morrison corrected. "A crucible. a place that forges strength instead of comfort. The Federation tried to create a galaxy where nothing bad could ever happen to anyone, but strength comes from overcoming adversity, not avoiding it. Chen walked to the center of the chamber, looking up at the representatives from dozens of species who had once threatened to destroy humanity entirely. 6 months ago, you saw us as a threat to galactic peace. You were right. We are a threat to the kind of peace that makes people weak and unprepared. She gestured toward the orbital displays showing Morrison's biofleet. But we're also the kind of threat that prepares people for real danger. Every world that has been integrated into our defensive network is now stronger than it was before. Every citizen who has undergone the modification process is now capable of surviving conditions that would have killed them. Previously, a representative from the Andromedan Consortium raised the question that many were thinking. What about those who don't want to be modified? What about those who prefer the old way of life? Morrison answered with surprising gentleness. They're welcome to choose comfort over strength, but they can't choose for everyone else. The galaxy now has safe worlds for those who want safety, and strong worlds for those who want to be ready for what's coming. Admiral Volkov activated a display showing the approaching harvester fleet. The alien vessels were massive, each one the size of a small moon. But more disturbing than their size was their purpose. The long-range scans suggested they were essentially mobile processing plants, designed to break down entire civilizations into raw materials. The advanced scouts will arrive in 18 months, Volkov announced. The main fleet will reach our galactic edge in 3 years. That gives us time to finish preparations. Chen looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. The Federation is dead. It died the moment it chose comfort over strength. But something new has taken its place. A confederation of worlds that choose to be strong together rather than weak apart. She paused, letting her words sink in. The harvesters are expecting to find a galaxy full of soft targets. Instead, they're going to encounter something they've never faced before. An entire galaxy that treats hostile environments as home. Morrison stepped forward one final time, his voice carrying across the chamber with harmonic frequencies that resonated in ways no purely human voice could manage. The old galaxy was built on the idea that civilization meant safety. The new galaxy is built on the idea that civilization means strength. When the harvesters arrive, they're going to discover what happens when you try to consume a galaxy full of people who learn to thrive where everything else dies. As the session ended and the representatives began to disperse, Chen remained in the chamber, looking out at the stars through the massive viewport. Earth was visible in the distance, still blue and green and beautiful. But now it was just one world among thousands where humanity had learned to call hostile places home. The galaxy was no longer the comfortable, safe place it had been under Federation rule. It was harder now, more dangerous, more challenging, but it was also stronger, more resilient, more ready for the darkness that was coming. And in the space between galaxies, something ancient and hungry was about to discover that some prey fought back.